Welcome to Listeners. I'm your host, Joe Chapin. Today we will be talking about the Steve Eiserman press conference. It's always great to hear from Steve Eiserman. He's just a once in a he's a very bright guy, and he's obviously going to lead our Detroit Red Wings back to glory. But a lot of people were talking about Steve Eiserman, and they were saying, they were taking one thing he said, which was that he was going to keep the ninth and 17th pick because he doesn't think he's planning on picking right there. But when we look at the Detroit Red Wings and we look at Stevie Y and we go back to the trade deadline, at that trade deadline press conference, he said this. He said that Detroit, obviously you would like to get players at a reasonable level, but he said that, he'd rather take a chance on a guy in a trade rather than pick if that's what comes about. So we know the dynamic of the NHL right now. The dynamic is the Detroit Red Wings have a lot of salary cap space. They have, assets to move. They have a war chest of picks that they can move. And what I think Stevie Y is setting up, a lot of people are tying the Detroit Red Wings to Alex DeBrincat. And that's totally fine because I think Alex DeBrincat would be a really good player for Detroit. But what I think Stevie Y is trying to set up, and me and Cindy always talk about this on the Red Alert podcast, okay? We always talk about the ISO bougie meter. Eiserman has a great poker face. He's really, really tuned in. If he says this and he does this a certain way, that it's going to come off as a certain way. So when you're a general manager or you're a salesman or you're selling houses or whatever, a lot of times, you put in the back of your mind, I want this for this. If you're selling a car and you want 4,000 for it, and the guy goes, I'll give you 3,500. Can you make it 3,900? Can you meet me halfway? You kind of went up a little bit more than you should have, but you just want to kind of bargain yourself to give you a good deal. What I think Stevie Y is trying to set up is when you get to the draft, a lot of times you get to the draft and there's unknowns, okay? Like there's going to be players that are going to be moved that we never thought were going to be moved. And that's going to come about in the next week. But when you look at the Detroit Red Wings and the way that they are set up, the way that they have enough salary cap space, the way that they're kind of constructed right now, there is a chance that, a team comes up to them who is, strapped by the salary cap. And they come up to Stevie and they go, listen, like, for instance, if it was the Vegas Golden Knights, right? Vegas Golden Knights come up to Steve Eiserman and they say, look, we'll give you William Karlsson. We'll take the ninth pick. Well, Stevie's gonna say, no, I'm not, I want to keep that. And maybe along the lines, they go through the negotiations and all that stuff. And he goes, I'll give you a second and I'll give you Boston's first next year. That's the way it can kind of go in Stevie Y's favor. I'm more certain than ever after today that the Detroit Red Wings are going to make a bold trade. When you look at Stevie Y's, tenure as the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings, he really hasn't made a bold move. I don't think they've been in position to make that bold trade, make that bold move. I think Stevie Y thinks, obviously he's not going to say like, oh, we're going to go out there, we're going to make a haul of a deal, and we're going to be front page of the Detroit Free Press or the Detroit News or any of these blogging websites. And that's just not Stevie. He's not going to come out and say that. So when I hear him say like, I plan to pick at 9, I plan to pick at 17, it's all well and good. When you're planning the pick, that's the right way to go about it. But Stevie Y even said in the presser later down, he goes, he says he doesn't expect to move the ninth pick as of right now. He also expects to use 17. He says picks will be options to trade, but those will probably happen on the floor. So what he is doing is he's saying, I plan to take these players, but when you get on the floor of the NHL draft, anything can happen. Any team could be willing to trade. Anything can happen. That's what I think Stevie Y is trying to get to. Yeah, I don't take much out of he's planning to pick at 9 and 17. He's dead certain on it. I just think that Stevie Y is doing his due diligence. Let's prepare like we're going to take a player at 9. Let's prepare like we're going to take a player at 17. And if you don't, let's say 9 and 17 go in a trade package for something outstanding. you know, you obviously planned on getting those players, but you might have got something better. I I think every general manager in the NHL, the NBA, the NFL, they are always looking to plan for the draft, but once you get to the draft, all bets are off. You don't know how things are going to develop. You don't know if you're going to trade up, you're going to trade down, you're going to trade for a player. You just never know. So when you look at the whole dynamic of the NHL and you look at the whole dynamic of how the Detroit Red Wings, war chest is being built, I look at, the way it's being set up, the way Stevie Y worded it, and I just think that there's going to be a total bold move that is made by Steve Eiserman at the draft, or maybe after the draft. But you never know, because there's a lot of teams that are up against the cap, and you never know what they're thinking, and you never know what they're going through. And obviously, Flyers are having a fire sale right now. You just there could be a player that a team is trying to re-sign that is 1 year away, and they have to get rid of a player to keep that player. Obviously, as the July 1st deadline comes around, some of these guys can be signed to extensions that are restricted free agents. Like Rasmus Dahlin, he has a deal that's pending, but he can't sign it till July. So when I look at the Detroit Red Wings, when I look at what Steve Eiserman is doing and the way he worded it at the press conference today, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I think there's a total bold move coming. Obviously people have tied Alex DeBrincat to Detroit, and that's perfectly fine because Alex DeBrincat's a really good player. Like I said, there's Pierre-Luc Dubois, which I would never be excited about Pierre-Luc Dubois with Detroit because he's demanded a trade from two different teams. So kind of a character question when I see that, especially how young he is. I think he's like 25 or something. But overall, like there's going to be a lot of movement in the NHL this year, especially with the salary cap kind of staying where it's at. I think a lot of teams are going to be pressed into making moves that they don't really want to make. And I think that's prime for Detroit to take advantage. And I think that's Stevie Y basically saying, like, look, we plan to take 9 and 17, but if you're going to come to us with an offer, or we come with you with an offer, just remember we planned on taking 9 and 7. We planned on picking 9 and 17. So I think Stevie Y is trying to set it up to where they can build something and try to maneuver a big time deal at the draft. I want to know what you think. What do you think below? Let me know below, and we'll kind of have a conversation as the NHL draft comes closer. I'll have my top 10 prospects that I'm kind of looking for the Detroit Red Wings. But in the meantime, please stay in tune with Between the Whistles Detroit. A lot of Red Wings coverage coming up. A lot of Pistons, Tigers, Red Wings, Michigan State, Michigan, Detroit Lions, everything along those lines. So subscribe below, and we will keep you in the loop. So there you go.